my god, I love the color. Damn, this thing looks cool. Could Toyota have made this thing any uglier? I mean, who would pick a color like that? And those are the reactions that I've been getting this week driving around this car. It's a very polarizing car. This is a 2018 Toyota CHR. There is going to be a 2019 out, so I'm going to talk about some of the differences that you can expect if you go into the showroom and buy a 2019. Unfortunately, Toyota didn't have one on hand to give me, so I'm stuck in this 2018 model. But we're going to do our best to show you around this 2018 Toyota CHR. I'm Jared with Car Buzz, and today I'm going to be taking you around the CHR and taking it on a drive, and I'm going to tell you whether or not you should buy it. So we're going to take a walk around the CHR, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this polarizing design. Let's start off with the color. Yeah, Toyota's not going to be offering this after 2018, so if you don't like it, don't worry about it. They're still going to offer some really interesting colors. I don't think there's too much about this design that really screams Toyota to me. This could be a lot of different things, to be honest. In the front, I could see it a little bit more. I think it shares a little bit of its headlight and grille design with the RAV4, but down here, it really doesn't look like any other Toyota. And we're going to come around the sides where you're really going to see where this thing just tapers off. And Toyota, I think they took offense to us calling them boring. So, I'm guilty of this too. I said Toyota builds boring cars, boring cars, boring cars. So what do? They go nuts with a car like this. We've got this interesting green paint here. We have the white roof here. And it's just interesting contrast between the two. Over here on the side, it has this coupe-like design where you could see on these rear doors, it almost looks like it's a two-door SUV, even though it's not. It's actually a four-door with 4 full doors. The handle's up here. It's kind of an odd spot for it. It's kind of to hide it so that it looks flush in this whole design. You've got these big 18-inch wheels, and for 2019, they're actually going to offer 19-inch wheels. Yeah, that's pretty big for a little car like this. The ride actually doesn't suffer too much because of it, although I haven't tested it with 2019s. So you really get this squish design here. You have these big plastic fenders on the bottom, and then this white roof really gives it a squeezed down look that you're not going to get on too many other SUVs in this class. So this is the compact SUV class. So you have competitors like the Kia Soul, you have the Honda HR-V, you have just a bunch of models like that. You have the new Nissan Kicks, and all of those are going to be a lot taller and maybe a little bit more practical and spacious on the inside. But Toyota has just gone all in with this sporty design, and they've said we're going to build a sporty design, and we don't care if it compromises a little bit on interior volume, which we're going to check out later. And then we come around back where I think the CHR gets even better. This is actually my favorite side of the CHR. I don't love it so much from the front. People are just really torn on this design, including me. Some people really love it. As I said before, some people hate it. Around back, I absolutely love it. I love how we have the white roof with this awesome spoiler. This is a really big spoiler for a not so sporty vehicle like this. We have these cool looking taillights. Honestly, I told a lot of people what I was driving this week, a CHR, and they assumed that meant Honda, which is, the name is just kind of similar to HR-V. It doesn't really scream Toyota. Toyota has a bunch of cars that have names. You have Camry, you have Corolla, you have Highlander. The only one that really differs from that is the 86. So when you see CHR, that could almost be anything. It just is kind of a random name. And back here, it continues this pinch design. I really enjoy the way that this car looks. You have this nice diffuser down here with this nice light in the back. You do have your backup camera and your rear wiper. And, the Toyota badge is just kind of insulated by this little lip spoiler on the back. You have this big spoiler up top. And the whole thing really flows together really well. I think it looks enormously aggressive from back here. So I really enjoy the way this car looks from the back, and it doesn't hurt visibility that bad. You'd expect with a slanted roof like this that you'd really not be able to see too much out of the back, but it's not that bad. And now we're going to come around this side where we finish off. I think this is just a totally unique looking car, and if you are in the market for one of these compact SUVs, you could do a lot worse than the Toyota CHR. I think it's a very interesting design. You're gonna either love it or hate it, I think. I haven't really heard otherwise. So if style is something you want, I think this is definitely one of the best, most interesting, maybe not best, but definitely most interesting looking cars in this segment. Okay, so under the hood of the CHR, we've got only one choice only on the engine. It's a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, nothing special. It's not the new 2-liter 4-cylinder that you're going to get in the new Corolla hatch. So this engine develops 144 horsepower and 139 foot-pounds of torque. Those aren't remarkable numbers. They're a little bit underwhelming. 0 to 60 is going to take you 10.3 seconds. Of course, power is sent to the front wheels. There is no all-wheel drive option, which is pretty interesting considering this is marketed as an SUV. And all that power is going to be sent to the front wheels through a CVT transmission, but more on that later. MPG is pretty good, although nowhere near best in the class. You're going to get about 27 MPG in the city, 31 in the highway, 29 combined. I've had a very difficult time trying to beat the 30s out of this car. No matter what I do, whether I drive it around like a lunatic or normal, I've been averaging around 30 MPG, and those numbers aren't that great considering the low power figure, and that's because this actually weighs a quite portly, for its size, 3,300 pounds. That's quite a bit more than rivals like the new Nissan Kicks, which could explain why this car is not that quick, even though it's a little more powerful than some of its rivals, and it's not that efficient as even some of its more powerful turbocharged rivals. So now we're going to take a look on the inside, where some of the funky styling that you see on the outside doesn't really carry over on the inside. It's a little bit of a dark, boring, interior on the inside. So we're going to go ahead and check that out now. I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the more interesting aspects, as well as some of the not so good aspects of this 2018 model. Of course, 2019 models are coming soon, so we do have these really nice seats here. They're cloth. You are going to be able to get leather on a new limited trim that wasn't available for 2018 that is available now. These seats are actually really bolstered. I love the way they feel. Even in cloth, I think this is a really nice durable cloth, and you do have these nice bolsters here that hug you in the corners, but they're not uncomfortable. I had to drive this car for about 6 hours the other weekend, and they were actually pretty comfortable for a long distance on the highway. They are fully manual. There's no power adjustment, except there is power lumbar here, just a very basic power lumbar here. So if you have trouble with bad back or anything like that, there is a little bit of lumbar in there. And now we're going to look at the door trim, which is also a really interesting aspect of this car. Of course, this interior is all black, which means you do have just all black trim here. The Toyota made this interesting plastic here. It's like sort of contoured, and it looks sort of like a diamond pattern. It's, of course, not very nice material. It's kind of chintzy feeling, but I like that Toyota didn't just leave it as like a flat piece. They made it, somewhat interesting by giving it this nice textured look to it. All the points that you touch are pretty soft. Like this is a nice soft faux leather material, and the upper parts of the door are actually soft touch as well. But as we're going to see when we step fully inside the interior, there are some hard touch plastics as well. So now we're going to get on in completely, and I'm going to show you the rest of the interior. Alright, so let's start off with the infotainment, where right off the bat, I'm going to have to warn you, I'm not going to talk too much about this infotainment system on this 2018. We have the XLE Premium trim, which was the highest trim for 2018, but now it's not going to be for 2019. This is an extremely, extremely basic infotainment system. What you see here is pretty much all you get. AM, FM, AHA, if you use that, I do not. You have your USB and aux jacks, those are down at the bottom there, and then your Bluetooth audio. There is not much else to be said about this radio. You do have some basic voice commands. If I push this,
what would you like to do?
And I'm not going to try it now, but it works decently well, although there's no Google search or anything special like that. And then you have some settings here. There's this weird setting here that I couldn't figure out. It says vehicle settings, and there's CHR, the car we're driving, but you can also tell it that it's an IM or that it's an 86. Haven't figured out what those do. They do something, but I haven't really figured that one out. So yeah, I haven't really used this screen much, and it's extremely basic. Now, the reason why I bring this up is for 2019, all of these CHRs are going to have Toyota's Entune 3.0 system. So that's going to roll in Apple CarPlay. That's going to get you Amazon Alexa integration. You're going to have apps like Pandora, Stitcher. You're going to have an integrated backup camera. It's just going to be a lot better. You're going to have built-in navigation, which which this car does not have on some trims of the CHR. So yeah, Toyota just made a great move. This is going to be gone after 2018, and I could not be happier about it, because this is one of the most basic systems I've used. And I mentioned a backup camera because, yes, this car is actually mandated by law to have one, although if I throw it in reverse, there's no backup camera. Where is it? Well, if I bring you up into the mirror here, you can see it up here. It's really terrible quality. I kind of like the positioning. I've seen this on a couple other cars. I think the old Hummer H3 used to use a system like that, but it's really hard to see. It just looks sort of like a Game Boy Color graphic. Like, that's mean to the Game Boy Color. I think Game Boy Color maybe had better graphics than that. So yeah, not great on that, but they are going to fix that for 2018. One of the nice things about the CHR is they're all going to have this. This is dual zone climate control, so you can set the temperature automatically and the fan speed. That's pretty nice in a relatively affordable car like this. And although we only have the cloth seats, they are heated with 3 modes, which is, again, not that bad on a car that's this price. So when I mentioned the price, for 2018, the XLE trim started at $22,500. The XLE Premium trim, which is what we're sitting in, was a little bit more expensive, $24,350. But Toyota's going to be changing up their trim levels for 2019. There's a new LE trim, which starts at $20,945. I like that they're making it a little more affordable, but that's going to get you 17-inch steel wheels and some other not so great features. So I would probably step up to the XLE trim, which is more or less the same as what we have now, except it's going to be cheaper. It's going to be $22,980, so under 23 grand. So one of my biggest complaints when I first got in this car and looked at the window sticker was that it was a little too expensive for what you were getting, but Toyota has fixed that. It's going to be cheaper now. And then there's that new limited trim that I mentioned. That's going to be 26 grand. That's going to get you leather seats and bigger 19-inch wheels. Might be worth a look, although I really do like the cloth. So now let's come over here to where the driver sits. This is a pretty darn nice steering wheel for a pretty affordable car like this. You have this, it's probably not real leather, but it feels really nice. There's some stitching here that feels pretty good as well. You do have controls around here. I'm going to complain a little bit about this steering wheel because I think these controls, I hate the way they're shaped. They're not just like one nice square. They're kind of skewed over, so it just makes reaching for buttons a little bit annoying. It's a minor complaint though. You can control your basic trip information here, and you can control all of the center stack information in this little information screen in the center. All CHRs are going to have that. You have a G meter, which is kind of silly in a car like this. This is not a performance car after all. You have your eco indicator, and then you have some of your safety settings, and that's something that Toyota actually did extremely well. All CHRs, no matter what trim, are going to have these buttons right here. This is for your lane departure warning and lane keep assist, and this is for your adaptive cruise control. That's included on safety sense. You're also going to get blind spot monitors. Those are over here on the mirrors. So that's really good that Toyota included all of that as standard, although the adaptive cruise control, while it does work well on the highway, does not work in stop and go traffic, which is really annoying. There are some cars at this price point that do that. And then we have some drive modes down here. They don't really do that much. You can switch it from normal, eco, sport. I've tried out a couple of them. It doesn't do much other than maybe change your throttle mapping, so the throttle will be a little bit touchier in sport mode than it would be in eco, but it doesn't really change the character of the car too much. You also have automatic high beams over on this side, and you do have 4 automatic, fully automatic windows, which is really nice at this price. Coming down here, there's a little bit of drive mode controls, not anything too crazy. I actually really like this shifter. It looks like metal. I'm sure it's not real metal, but it just feels really, really nice to the touch. You just bring it all the way back for drive, and you do have a full manual mode. This is actually better than the manual mode you get on some Toyota automatics. You do have 7 preset ratios on this CVT transmission, and when I first got in this, I could have sworn I was driving a 6-speed automatic, so that's high praise. This is a CVT that was done extremely well. We have our electronic parking brake here. That's pretty easy to use. You pull it up to pull it up, and then you just push it down to put it down. Traction control off. I doubt too many people are going to be touching that. And you have your little brake hold here, so when you come to a stop in traffic, you can take your foot off of the brake and the car will just sit there without you having to hold it all the time, which is a pretty nice feature. I've seen that on a couple other cars, so I really like that as well. And then one final interesting touch here is if we come up here on the headliner, Toyota decided to do these weird little, I don't even know what they are. They just kind of look like leaves. They're sort of cut out here in the headliner. It's just an interesting way to break up an otherwise pretty drab interior. This interior is all black, although you can get, I believe, a tan one on the new limited trim, which I would maybe do because it adds a splash of color on the inside here. So now we're going to check out the rear, where this car is not the best. Most of the cars in this class are pretty tight in the rear, but this car actually manages to do pretty well. So we're going to go check that out now. So as I mentioned, getting in the back is going to be a little weird. You're going to reach for the door handle, not find it. That's because it's up here. And we do have this really weird opening. It's a little difficult to bend over, although I had my grandmother in this car earlier and she managed to get in the back, no problem. So it is a little bit weird of an angle. You have to sort of pick your foot up and then you kind of have to duck down to get in it. So headroom is not that great, but once you're in, the headroom is actually not that bad. The roof actually goes above this sort of dip. You just have to dip yourself to kind of get in there. But as you can see, I actually have enough room that I'm sitting sort of above the door line right now, which is really, really interesting. Along the side here, we have one cup holder. There's another one on the other side as well, but there's really nothing really to talk about in here. There's no foldable center armrest. There's really none of that back here, so it is a little bit boring. And then when you do shut the door, you're gonna have this big plastic piece here. That's pretty much right where your head is. So the window is actually in front of you here, which is a little bit strange. So when you're riding back here, you don't really get a whole lot of sunlight. You do feel a little claustrophobic because this plastic piece is right where your head's gonna be. So if you have any passengers that you're taking around that are a little claustrophobic, you know, this might not be the best car for them, but it'll probably be fine for small children and non-picky adults. All right, so around back, simple tailgate, opens up, no tricks. You're gonna have 19 cubic feet of storage and you're gonna get 36.4 cubic feet if you fold those rear seats down. There's, you know, cars in this segment that have more than that because obviously you have this sloped roof design that's gonna cut out some of the volume that you would otherwise get if this was just sort of a normal upright SUV. You don't really have any extra room. Some SUVs give you some storage below, but this one's not. You just have a spare tire back there. And folding the rear is actually pretty easy. You have this nice little flimsy design here for the cargo cover. I thought it felt a little bit cheap at first, but then I thought, you know what? Like, I kind of like it because it's soft, and if you do end up packing this car pretty full, it does bend really easily, so you're never gonna like overstuff this car to the point where you can't fit anymore. And if you do need the extra room, folding the rear seats is not that hard. I wish Toyota would have put something back here to fold them down, but simply just grab these little latches that are on the second row seats, fold it down, and you have a nice bit of storage there. You also can remove this piece if you want, and you can fit a decent amount of stuff back here. Okay, so now that I've shown you all around the Toyota CHR, all that's left is to take it for a drive. Okay, so now I'm underway in the CHR, where Toyota, again, I have been one of Toyota's biggest critics when it comes to how these cars drive. And Toyota has just always been on my naughty list for building cars that were more of appliances than things that you would actually derive enjoyment from. And I had the 2018 Camry XSE with 301 horsepower a couple weeks ago, and that car turned my thinking around a little bit. That car was more fun than I ever thought a Camry could be, and I feel like this CHR is much the same. The steering is pretty darn good. This is one of the better Toyotas that I've driven in terms of steering feel. It's still numb. This isn't really, you know, hot hatchback territory. It's no sports car, anything like that. But it's not dead by any stretch of the imagination. I've driven a couple of the other cars in this segment. The Nissan Rogue Sport had more vague steering than this.
this, as did the Nissan Kicks. That car just had absolutely zero steering feel. This actually has a nice tight little rack. It's not bad. I realize that's a double entendre, but you know what I mean. The steering rack is pretty tight, and it doesn't take too many turns lock to lock. The turning circle is not amazing for a car this small, but you do get decent road feedback from the wheel without it being too tiresome to drive. Yeah, I really like it. This steering wheel is really nice to hold. It's real small. You have good grips around it. Power is an area where Toyota just is not really excelling here in this category. You have cars in this class that are pretty darn slow. You have the Nissan Kicks, which is in the 120 horsepower range. You have the Mazda CX-3, which I believe is in the 140 range. This is, you know, right in there. It's not too bad. 147 horsepower. It's not the bottom of this class, although it does have a kind of portly 3,300 pounds to lug around. That's kind of a lot for a car in this segment. I think the Nissan Kicks is like 600 pounds lighter than that. So yeah, this is not that light, so that does explain why the 0 to 60 time is over 10 seconds. It's not a speed demon by any stretch of the imagination. However, I thought that the Nissan Kicks felt a lot slower than this, and I think there are a couple of vehicles in this class. Like, I've been told that the HR-V, Honda's small crossover, does not feel very quick or sprightly at all. So this is just not a very sporty class. You do have a couple of standouts, like the Hyundai Kona, which is available with a 1.6 liter turbo. You have that same engine in the Kia Soul Turbo, where it produces 201 horsepower. So if you want like one of these little compact SUVs and you want it to be powerful, it's the Kia Soul. That's basically your best bet in terms of power. That being said, I don't think that this CHR really feels that slow. It's front-wheel drive only, and this is a CVT transmission, and I'm telling you, this is a really darn good CVT. Trust me on this, viewers. Nobody hates a bad CVT more than I do. I find them absolutely repulsive to drive. You just get this sort of rah, where the engine doesn't really want to decide what gear it's going to be in, and you don't get a nice acceleration run. When you floor it in a car, you want that feeling of rah, 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 and in a CVT you just sort of get a noise that just doesn't seem to stop. This CVT is one of the better ones I've used, probably among the best, especially at this price category. So when I was driving it along normally in normal, eco mode, whatever, it gives the impression that it's actually doing something to shift gears. I'm driving it along now. Here it comes, 2,000 RPM. It goes down a little bit as if it just shifted a gear. Now we're going a little faster, and it really does almost feel like gears. If I tap it over here in manual mode, I didn't drive it too much this week like this, but there you go. That was a downshift that happened pretty quick. I'm gonna go ahead and upshift it. Obviously not fast, but it does have a manual mode if you ever do want to do that. There's no paddles on the wheel or anything like that. You do have 7 preset gear modes that you can play around with. Not too much fun, but again, I actually think this transmission is not too bad when you're driving it around normally, in traffic, everything like that. As far as the CVT, it behaves really well. Even on the highway. Now, this is a big complaint that I had with the Nissan Kicks. When I was on the highway in that car, I really had to put the throttle down to pass people, and it did not like it. This car, I can just dip into the throttle a little bit. It's immediate with the power. It doesn't need to downshift as such, and I'm on my way. I got my acceleration done. You do run into a problem when you floor it. I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. It's just a noise. It's not great. And obviously this car is not fast. I just floored it for quite a bit there and still stayed within the confines of the law, even with all of that accelerating. So yeah, not a speed demon. However, you're gonna get pretty darn good gas mileage. I had trouble beating 30 mpg out of this car. Even after I just did that, my mpg average is showing 30.2, which again, not the best in the class, but this is sort of an older engine for Toyota. I'd really like to see them put in that new engine that they have in the Corolla hatchback, and I'd love to see a 6-speed manual, to be honest. I think this car would be a hoot and a half with the new Corolla hatchback engine and the automatic and the manual transmission that was newly developed for that car. I don't think anybody would buy it, but it would just be fun, in my opinion. And I mentioned a lot of the changes around the cabin with this dumb head unit. Like, thank God Toyota's getting rid of that for 2019. Engine, transmission, all that, not going to change for 2019. They haven't offered any bigger engine. I'd really like to see a turbo or just maybe a bigger 4-cylinder engine option, and you know, maybe that manual, as I said. But as of now, Toyota has not announced anything like that. The big addition is going to be Apple CarPlay for 2019. That's going to be the big difference for this car. There were a couple drive modes here. You know, I've played around with them a little bit here. Like, I'm going to throw it into eco mode, and the RPMs drop like a little bit, and I feel like if I push the throttle, it's not as willing to give me more power. And then likewise, if I put it in sport mode, you know, without changing anything in the throttle, now when I dip into it, oh, it's going to give me power a lot quicker. Steering, I don't feel anything different with the steering when I do that. It still feels just as tight as before. And yeah, it's not a super sporty experience. I think that maybe if it had a more aggressive tire, maybe a more aggressive suspension, that it would maybe handle these turns a little bit better. I think the chassis is really darn good on this car, to be honest. It doesn't roll around too much, and you have these really awesome bolstered seats that just hug you and hold you in. Really like the way it feels, although, you know, it is kind of swervy, but not necessarily worse than a lot of other cars in this class. It actually feels pretty darn tight to drive. The chassis is engineered extremely well, and even with big 18-inch wheels, and you can even get 19s, the ride is fantastic. I never felt uncomfortable in this car, and that's a really good party trick in this small class. I've been in a lot of SUVs that are bigger than this that don't feel quite as comfortable. So yeah, this is pretty darn good if you ask me. I'm gonna go ahead and floor it now. Come on. Yeah, you're definitely not going to impress anybody with that, but it is definitely a nice place, a nice driving car. I think I'm going to give Toyota props here. Credit where credit is due. We criticized Toyota for being way too boring, and they come out with this amazingly styled car. You may hate it, you may love it. I've talked to people on both ends of the spectrum, people that think this is the ugliest car ever built, and then people who just think it looks awesome, super cool. Why isn't there a hot version with a bunch of power? And then I'd actually buy it. And I sit somewhere in the middle. I think the front end isn't quite as good as the rear end. I think the rear end looks like a pure concept car. It's pretty cool back there. The front end, not so much in my opinion. And obviously this, I think they call it radiant green color. That might not be to your taste either. Toyota is going to discontinue that for the 2019 model year, but there are still going to be a bunch of cool blues and things like that with the white roof that you can get. Still a bunch of ways to option this car to make it pretty cool on the inside. And I was going to give Toyota a lot of faults for this car being a little bit expensive. I have this 2018 X Elite Premium, and I think with destination and everything, my car is almost $27,000, and from where I'm sitting, this is no $27,000 car. It does have that standard Toyota safety sense, which is great. You know, having blind spot, having adaptive cruise control at this price is very, very nice. I wish the adaptive cruise control would bring it to a stop. Come on, Toyota. That's just a software thing. Change it and move on your way. Let people use it in stop and go traffic. I guess you don't want the liability, but whatever. And, you know, the price, 27 grand. For my money, I'd rather have 201 horsepower with the Kia Soul. But luckily, Toyota's bringing that price way down for 2019, which is great. So this same car is going to be under 23,000 before destination in 2019. So that's pretty darn good as well. And with that being said, I think Toyota has done an overall very nice job here. I'm going to give Toyota a lot of credit here. they said, we're done being boring. People have called us boring. We don't want that anymore. So the CEO said, let's build some interesting cars. Now, this was only a toe dip into sportiness. This isn't like a hot hatch. This doesn't have a turbo. This is no like really, really fun car. So as far as shedding the image of boring cars, they're shedding it quite slowly. They're not in any hurries to build a Civic Type R competitor or anything like that, which, hey, you know, give this thing an even bigger spoiler on the back, give it like 250, 300 horsepower. I think you've got a pretty decent Civic Type R competitor there. I think this chassis, you know, could put up with the abuse if you do all of the other performance upgrades around it. So I would hesitate to give this a must-buy rating because even with Toyota's Entune 3.0, it's not my favorite infotainment system in the world. You're gonna get Apple CarPlay, but what about all the people that use Android? Come on, Toyota, like that's just an oversight. Give it Android Auto as well on all your cars. No announcement from Toyota whatsoever. And then, you know, this car still is kind of slow. It's not the slowest in the class, so I won't give it too many knocks there. But I am gonna give them tons of credit for building a car that I genuinely think looks interesting and it drives pretty well as well. So Toyota usually builds these boring cars that you wouldn't even want to look at and are pretty equally boring to drive. This is not that. So the 2018 Toyota CHR, I think if it had a more powerful engine option, not even just a more powerful engine, just give me the option, I think this thing could be a must buy. And the pricing, I wasn't too happy with the way they were pricing it in 2018, and I was hating on this terrible infotainment system, the dumb backup camera arrangement, but I already know that Toyota's fixing it, so I can't fault them for that for 2019. So with that in mind, I think the Toyota CHR is not a must-buy, but it's a great buy in this segment. If you want an interesting looking small SUV that gets pretty darn good gas mileage and doesn't drive like an appliance, this is definitely a car you'll want to consider. And if you liked this review and you'd like to see more, be sure to subscribe to the CarBuzz Unboxing YouTube channel and download our app on iOS and Android and follow us on all the social media networks. Hope you'd enjoy this video. See you next time.